Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the part of the world where you're joining us from. Welcome to this webinar organized by the Alliance for Science. We are so glad to have such a huge number of people joining us from different parts of the world on Zoom, on Facebook. And we are also excited to have an amazing group of speakers that will be speaking to us today on the past, present, and future of nutritionally enhanced foods, particularly the incredible purple tomato, developed using tools of modern biotechnology. This topic is particularly interesting and important for so many reasons, which we probably already know, and some of those we'll be discussing during this webinar. But ultimately, because it has the potential to offer better nutrition and health benefits to many people all over the world. My name is Modesta Abugu. I'm a PhD student in horticultural science at the North Carolina State University, and I will be your moderator for today. A couple of announcements for the webinar. It will be recorded and made available on all of our social media pages, which is at Science Ally on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So to go over the introduction for our panelists, one of our panelists today is a world-renowned plant scientist, a nutrition icon, and the developer of the purple tomato, Professor Cathie Martin. Cathie is a group leader at the John Innes Center and a professor at the University of Anglia, Norwich, England. She researches the relationship between food and health, especially on how crops can be fortified to combat chronic diseases across the world. Cathie is a fellow of the Royal Society, and in 2021, she was awarded the prestigious Rank Prize for Nutrition for her globally significant research in making fruits and vegetables more nutritious. Thank you so much for being here with us, Cathie.
Thanks, it's a real pleasure.
Great. And our second speaker is Dr. Eric Ward. Eric is a molecular biologist with broad management training in large companies and startups. Currently, he's the co-founder, co-CEO, and director of AgBiome, a North Carolina-based company using its intricate understanding of the plant microbiome to develop biological solutions to crop challenges. He is also an investor and advisor of the Purple Tomato Project at the Norfolk Plant Sciences. We are so glad to have you here, Eric.
Thanks, appreciate the invitation, Modesta.
Finally, our third speaker is Dr. Nathan Pumplin. Nathan is the president of Norfolk Healthy Produce, the US-based subsidiary of Norfolk Plant Sciences that is leading the commercialization of the purple tomato. He's passionate about bringing technologically advanced solutions that impact human health and nutrition to the market. He has a PhD in plant genetics and now focuses on developing new healthy products that meet consumer needs. Welcome, Nathan.
Great to be here, Modesta, thanks.
Okay, great. Before we dive into the talk of the day, I'd like to ask our speakers and our participants a fun question. Our participants can please type their answers on the webinar chat or on the comment section for those streaming live on Facebook. The question is, if you were to eat one fruit or vegetable in the world for the rest of your life, what vegetable or fruit would that be and why? I'll start with you, Cathie.
Well, it has to be tomato. I quite like strawberries, but tomato is the best. I'm a diabetic, so I can't have anything that's too sweet.
That is great. Eric?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. I would go with the same thing, and it's not just because of this project. It's because there's so many different varieties, particularly that are available now in the U.S. market, and there's so many different ways you can cook with tomatoes, different kinds of dishes you can use it in. So I probably have to pick that, but I'm hopeful that I never have to make that choice.
That's interesting, and I'm not surprised that we all are picking tomato. Nathan, what about you?
Oh, well, I'm going to go with a different answer, but I'll echo what Eric said a little bit. One of the things that's great about the world is you don't have to choose just one food to eat, right? There's lots of different foods and there's different seasons. So I'll eschew tomatoes for this, and I'll imagine a world where I can only eat peaches, but they're always perfectly ripe, and I'm just gonna eat every meal over the sink.
Oh, that sounds delicious. I see a couple of our participants responding mangoes. Some are saying tomatoes as well. Well, those are really interesting answers, and I'm glad that at least 2 out of 3 of our panelists think tomatoes is a fruit, vegetable they want to eat. So this is a great opportunity to dive into our talk, and that is on the incredible purple tomato. So Nathan, can you tell us more about this purple tomato?
Absolutely, Modesta, thanks. So I'm going to show a few slides here for the people who are maybe a little bit less familiar with the purple tomato, haven't spent many hours staring at them as we all have. And then I want to open it up to Cathie and Eric, and hopefully there's lots of questions. And then Modesta, I need to have screen sharing enabled, please, or Christopher.
Yeah, that works now.
There you go.
I've got it. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so I think you're seeing a slide now. Is that correct?
Yes, you can see that.
So I want to give a sense of where we're coming from. You know, you heard the introduction to Cathie and her mention of working on nutritionally fortified foods in many directions for many really good reasons. So we have this vision with Norfolk Plant Sciences where we're building a future where our society lives sustainably, in good health, and in harmony with nature. This is really critical, and this is something we think we can do if we really fully embrace science, we embrace facts, and we embrace biotechnology and allow it to deliver the benefits that it's able to deliver, but really together with all of the other pieces that work together in our food system. And one of the first outcomes of this belief that Cathie and her team did a fantastic job putting together already some years ago is this extremely healthy purple tomato. So what you're all hopefully seeing is this tomato looks different from any tomato you've ever seen. There's of course purple tomatoes that you can buy in the supermarket, you can grow in your garden. They look really beautiful on the outside. When you cut them in half and look on the inside, they're mostly red, which is also very pretty, but you don't have this strong pigmentation through the whole fruit. So here's a few of the benefits of the purple tomato. So first of all, it's extremely distinctive. It looks different from any other tomatoes, and it's great to have this diversity of different fruits. It has a lot of appeal to different consumers on the health front, and I'll talk about that in a sec, but it's just genuinely beautiful. It's a great example of science, of cutting edge, but also proven and established and safe science being brought to bear in an important area, and it's highly distinctive. So the reason that it looks so different and the nutrition is so different is it has nutrients called anthocyanins. So anthocyanins are the things that make blueberries purple, they make the skin of eggplants purple. They occur naturally in tomatoes, but they're not usually present in the fruit. So these purple tomato fruits have 10 times higher levels of the nutrients, anthocyanins, and they are antioxidants, anti-inflammatory compounds. They're 10 times higher than any other conventionally bred tomato that is purple. The level is equivalent to blueberries and on the lower end of aronia, of chokeberry, which is often held up as the highest anthocyanin superfood that you can eat. In addition to that, it has 2 times longer shelf life because it turns out that the high anthocyanins in the fruit slow the rotting and the final fruit softening process. And so I'll touch on that in a moment. And the last piece, which I think for the Cornell Alliance for Science is really critical, this piece of science, this piece of biotechnology has been shown by peer-reviewed science to have health benefits, to function, to be safe. And this is a process, so the first paper was in 2008, and it's really a great example of using the scientific method and really pushing things forward on a solid foundation of facts. So this is a snapshot from Cathie's paper in 2008, and I'll let Cathie opine on it when I run through this. She has much more depth and interesting color to add to this. But I just want to give two real quick take-home messages. So the title of the paper was Enrichment of Tomato Fruit with Health-Promoting Anthocyanins by Expression of Select Transcription Factors. So this was describing the first bioengineered purple tomato. But what I want to highlight here is in figure 4 of the paper, they did a health study on a mouse model. So these are mice which are prone to developing cancer. And there were 3 groups in this study. So each line represents a different group of mice. The blue line was fed the typical mouse diet. The red line was fed the typical mouse diet plus some dried red tomato extract. And the purple group was fed the same, but purple tomato extract instead of red. So a very well-designed, very well-controlled study. And what you're looking at here on the x-axis is longevity. So what you see is the group of mice that were fed purple tomato are living much, much longer than the other 2 groups. And so what you see is also, if you eat red tomatoes, if these mice eat red tomatoes, they do about the same as the standard diet, but it's this purple tomato that really increases their lifespan and reduces their incidence of cancer. So this is really a critical piece, again, of careful science that's beginning to show very concretely the health benefits of the purple tomato. Now, I'll put the asterisk here. This is not a human feeding study. Of course, human diet work is much more complex, but this is a very strong sign. So how do the tomatoes become so nutritious? Why is it that they're strong purple and full of these very healthy antioxidants? Well, if you look at tomatoes, and many of you in this group have probably grown tomato seedlings and seen them, they're able to turn purple. So the purple color you see in these stems is anthocyanins, similar to what's in the fruit. But typically the anthocyanins are not accumulating in tomato fruits, at least not our modern domesticated versions, but they accumulate in a lot of wild natural varieties of tomato relatives. What Cathie and her team did, and again, she can provide more color, but she was working on snapdragons and asking the question, why are some snapdragons purple and some are white or some are yellow? And I want to mention also with this slide that snapdragons are edible. So this picture of snapdragons is coming from a website where you can buy freeze-dried edible snapdragons. What Cathie found was if you put these transcription factors, so these genes that turn on pathways that can make new products, if you put these genes into a tomato plant and you turn them on in the fruit, these will activate the whole natural anthocyanin pathway and they will give you purple fruit. So it's a really elegant, relatively simple, but very solid piece of science that works extremely well. And so here's one of the other benefits that came along with this. This is looking at the shelf life of the tomato. And this is a big topic in the sustainability field, in the agriculture field at a larger view. The problem of food waste is really huge. If we can reduce the amount of food that's wasted in the value chain, that can have a huge impact on the nutrition that's available, and of course the footprint of agriculture. And what Cathie and her team saw when she was working with these purple tomatoes is as the red tomatoes that are very similar start to go bad, the purple tomatoes are staying good. So they're still turgid, they're still strong, the cell walls aren't breaking down, it's not rotting, and you also have less mold growing on it. So this is mold growing on a typical tomato and mold not able to grow on the purple tomato. And you can look at this with data also and say, what's the percentage of firm fruits through time? And again, here you see the purple tomato is staying firm much longer. So this is another benefit of using this bioengineering solution. So how can we enjoy purple tomatoes? Well, we'd love to see a world where purple tomatoes are not the only food we can eat, but we have a mix of different types of tomatoes that can go in a salad, that can go in juices, that can go into sauces and pastes, that can be great just cut into wedges with some salt sprinkled on top. Any way that you like to eat tomatoes in a caprese salad, these can be a great addition. And I want to kind of comment. So one of the things Modesta had asked about is, what's your view of bringing this out to people. So it's great to do the science and publish papers and show what the purple tomato can be and could be. But it's much different to say, well, can I go to the store and buy it? I'd like to go make a purple tomato salad. And now it's not available in stores. So one of the reasons is many people believe GMOs are bad. Customers, many consumers are asking for the non-GMO project verified. If you do a survey, so this is on the left, you're seeing a survey from the Pew, who did a questionnaire. What do you think about GM foods? Are they healthier or less healthy than conventional? And about 50% of people thought GMO foods are worse for you than normal foods. But 44 thought that they're just as good, they're the same, and 5% think that GMO foods are actually better. If you go to the store though, and you look for these different types of foods, you see there's non-GMO project verified label on many products. So there's over 50,000 products with this label, 3,000 brands, 26 billion in annual sales, and there's many more labels and products that fit within this category. If you say, hey, I'm one of this 5% that thinks that GMO foods could be a little bit better, bioengineered foods could be better, and I'd like to buy some, there's very few visible products out on the market. And we think that this is really a big, not just scientific opportunity and public engagement opportunity, but also a legitimate business opportunity to provide specialty produce options for consumers in this segment who would love to have a little bit of a different product, something that has some added benefits, something that has some added nutrition, maybe something that's better for the agriculture supply chain that they don't have available now. And so that's really our focus, is to start to get these added healthy produce options out onto the market. So here's a glimpse of where we are with the status. So if you look at any new type of product, you have a technical feasibility piece. So Cathie and her team were able to show very, very clearly that this purple tomato works extremely well. You get the added nutrients, there's all of these benefits that come from it. Cathie's team put it in a lot of different varieties of tomato and showed that it's very stable in different varieties of tomato and through generations. This is really key. She also worked on the IP and was able to get that piece all together. And I know for some people, intellectual property is controversial. For others, it's clear that you need to do that just to protect yourself and be able to get a discovery out there. And that's really the focus. So now with Norfolk Plant Sciences and with the US-based subsidiary, which we're calling Norfolk Healthy Produce, we are focusing on these three pieces. So one is the regulatory, and this is really huge. So both with the US Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, we have submissions that are under review right now. And so there's a dialogue, there's questions that come from the regulatory bodies, and it's excellent that they're there to review the products to make sure that they're safe. This is a critical part of the process. The other piece that's really critical is public acceptance. And what we know is there is significant interest from some consumers, of course not all, but that's not the goal. And there's also a positive trend of a bigger percentage of consumers being open to the idea of bioengineered foods. And that's something that the Cornell Alliance for Science has done a lot of work on, done a lot of presentations. A lot of what I know about the consumer trends is coming from your work. So thank you for that. And we think that the purple tomato is a great product to offer to the small fraction of people who are interested in it. One thing that Jonathan Jones often says, who's one of the founders of Norfolk Plant Science, is someone can go and say thanks, but no thanks. I recognize that this is bioengineered, I don't want it, but nobody is going to be surprised that all of a sudden, this biotechnology food has entered their diet, and they were unaware and they were unable to say, hey, I don't want that. So it's highly distinctive for those who want it. We'd like to make it available. For those who don't want it, that's fine. There's many other options out there, and I think that's great. I love to buy organic heirloom tomatoes regularly. It's great to have more choice. And so the final piece is really getting a commercial product out onto the market for people. And so this is something that we're heavily involved in now, putting the pieces together as we, of course, work with the regulatory agencies to make sure that we have a path to bring these out to market legally and safely. So I'm just gonna go past that. Thank you for everyone for being on this webinar, for being interested in the purple tomatoes, interested in bringing bioengineered solutions out into the world, at least discussing with them, engaging with them, sharing with your family and friends. We do have a website. If you're interested to learn more, you can go to bigpurpletomato.com and register. We have a mailing list, so we can keep you posted when we have products that are available. And Modesta, thanks again. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for that presentation. And I'm really glad you put up that New York Times article on the GMO purple tomato, because as at the time it came out, the conversation all over social media, especially from gardeners and consumers, were like, when are we going to have the seeds? We want it as soon as possible. Well, now to turn over to Cathie. I'm sure many people here will be wondering, what was your motivation for this breakthrough research? Or what is the origin of the purple tomato story?
Well, of course, I worked for a long time on flower color, so I was obsessed with colors early on, but I had done quite a bit of reading about how purple colors were supposed to be healthier for you. And an opportunity arose through some European Union funding to work on a project that would increase the antioxidant capacity of tomatoes. And so I said, okay, we'll try it with the anthocyanins. I think it's easy to do. Tomato is easy and it's delicious. And I never imagined that it would take on. I mean, there's something about an image, I think, that is just fantastic. And you sort of fall in love with the image, maybe, but it's, when I saw the data from the mouse study that Nate showed, I thought, first of all, oh, that's not very impressive. And then I realized that this is talking about animals dying of cancer without any therapeutic, it's just a change in nutrition. And then I realized that 30% longer lifespan is incredible, that you could aspire to get that just by improving your diet. And I think that's something that's part of the motivation as well.
That is so great to hear. And we have some follow-up questions from our participants. And thank you all participants for sending us those questions. Please keep them coming and we'll get to answer them as we go. It's really amazing to hear how the potential of this tomato can increase levels of antioxidants in humans. But still in the case or in the area of like speaking about motivation, I'm curious, Eric, as the current president of AgBiome, what was your motivation to join this team of investors and advisors on this research?
Yeah, thanks, Modesta. Well, my involvement with Norfolk Plant Sciences and Cathie and Jonathan actually predates the founding of AgBiome. So maybe the way to ask the question would be the other way around. No, in all seriousness, I was thrilled when they asked me if I would help get the company going and join the board of directors back 10 plus years ago. I was working in Norwich part-time at the time, and then spent a year over there. And, you know, I went into plant molecular biology in the 1980s, right at the dawn of introducing foreign DNA into plants. And it was a hugely exciting time back the early 1980s when people first demonstrated that you could take genes out of a bacterium and express them in a plant for the first time. Nothing but huge upside. And to my somewhat, horror would be too strong a word, but if I had known the way it would go globally with respect to acceptance of the technology at sort of a visceral consumer level, I might have considered going into another line of work, actually, because who would have thought that we would see the amount of roadblocks thrown up? Now, so let me just draw a distinction. Of course, almost all of the corn and soybeans on the planet are now genetically modified, which has been a huge upside for the growers that grow them, and also created a whole new business, obviously. The real issue is that people equate that production agriculture of commodities with the technology called GMO. And I think that's why you see all this hype around the non-GMO certified label. People are lumping a whole basket of emotions related to companies like Monsanto and chemicals like glyphosate into that non-GMO thing. And this is a way to just steer clear of that completely. And I understand the visceral reaction to that. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. I'm passionate about helping people see the value of the technology independent of the way it's been monetized up until now. And this is sort of a dream project. If you think about, I can remember back in the mid-90s sitting there in a big company thinking, what would be the perfect product that we could develop that would get consumers really excited about GM technology? And it was always something that looked really cool and tasted really good. And this is what we've got with the technology that Cathie developed. So very exciting time now that we're so close to commercializing it. It's great to have Nate on the team driving that. So I couldn't be happier with where we're at. It's been a 10-year overnight success story too, but we're getting there.
That is so interesting to hear, Eric. And in the spirit of that, this purple tomato was really actually developed in Norwich, England. And now you're looking abroad for the commercialization and sale of the technology. Cathie, why is this the case?
Basically, because until quite recently, the UK was part of the European Union, and there isn't really a route that you can take to commercialization of a GMO product, because we had the rules, and we still have the rules, that you have to go through EFSA notification, and then it has to be approved for sales by the European Parliament. And there's a lot of resistance to doing this. And it's not something for small producers or what we call SMEs, small and medium enterprises. So, and as Eric mentioned, I mean, we're trying to think about consumer traits here. So the priority for the big companies is not to produce something that would satisfy the interests or needs of consumers. So really, it's fantastic that there is an opportunity in the US. It's partly the separation of the safety assessment and USDA deregulation. It's partly been facilitated by recent changes in the USDA regulatory oversight process, but it's possible. Whereas people still say it's not banned in Europe, but it's just impossible for a small enterprise with a focus on consumer benefits to really make headway there.
Yeah, that is really a very important point as far as how much countries approve or facilitate the commercialization and of so many of these important technologies. It's important for us to really think about how these policies kind of affect how consumers get access to this healthy and nutritious food. We've had quite a large number of comments from Facebook and from our chat on the tomatoes, and one of the interesting ones is from Peter Davis. He says, the fruits, they're rather small. Why not a bigger fruited variety?
And I answer that question.
Sure.
Yeah, we did the experiment first of all in microtom, because we have to pay for the area of greenhouse that we use from our budgets, and microtom is a dwarf tomato. So it was very economical to do the transformation in microtom. But of course, we immediately crossed it out to other big fruit, globe tomatoes. So we have it in a huge range of different sizes, shapes, sizes, and yeah, just general. So diversity. And we're looking for the best tasting varieties now. So even though it was very small to start off with, it's got much bigger by conventional breeding.
That is great. Thank you for that response. Nathan, you've been responding to some of the questions on the chat. Thank you for that. I wonder what your thoughts are on the modification changes. Does it require more fertilizers? And how does this change the soil microbiome? And the required growing conditions for a normal tomato variety?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I think one of the first things to keep in mind is all tomatoes have about 25,000 genes, and there's a lot of diversity in the tomato family in Solanum lycopersicum and in related relatives that can be interbred with tomato. And so there's a ton of diversity in, you know, response to fertilizers, in size of fruit, in growth habit. And I haven't seen any data, but I know for other plants, you know, there's a lot of diversity in the microbiome, in the roots or in the leaves, based on which variety of plant you're growing. So what we've seen so far is the purple tomato is no different from a regular tomato. So it has 2 genes added into it in a sea of 25 to 30,000 genes. And these are very specifically impacting the accumulation of nutrients in the fruit. So I think what clearly has the biggest impact on how much fertilizer does it use, you know, how does the fruit taste, how does it yield, what's the microbiome, is the variety that it's in. So when Cathie mentioned, you know, it first went into microtom, then it was crossed with moneymaker, then it's been intergressed with different varieties. It will take on the characteristics of the varieties that it's been bred with. And that's really a critical consideration. I was in a session a few weeks ago on consumer perception of agriculture and plant improvement. And so one of the questions was, you know, would you accept bioengineering as a solution to improve foods? And something like 55% of people in this study said, yes, we would do that. Then the question was, would you accept CRISPR, you know, genome editing to improve the food? And about 67% of people said yes. So, you know, people are more open to the idea of this precision genome editing than adding foreign DNA by bioengineering. So that's okay. Then they said, would you support using plant breeding to improve the foods that you eat? And 75% of people said yes. So what that means is 25% of people would say, you know, what we've been doing for the past 10,000 years, we're not so comfortable with that. You know, we think maybe we should stop plant breeding. And I think it's one of those things you have to look at and say, you know, it's really critical that we feed people. It's really critical that we try to do more with less. And, you know, we try to do a little bit better this decade than we did 2 decades ago. And so I hope this is one tool that we'll be able to use together with plant breeding, together with all of the traditional approaches that we have.
I just wanted to add that actually the way we did the engineering was specifically designed to make only the fruit purple, so to not change any. And when we made the first lines, we didn't know whether it had worked or not, so, until the fruit started to ripen. And it was over Christmas, and we went down to the greenhouse, and we were looking at it. It was really, really slow because it was cold and there wasn't much light. And it was amazing when we finally realized that it was going to work. But there's really no effect on yield or adverse effects on anything except to the fruit. So I think that there's a certain precision in what we did, and that was by design as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up that point, Cathie, because some consumers have actually argued that, so instead of eating purple tomato, one can really eat loads and loads of blackberries. And
yeah, you could do, but imagine how expensive that would be, and they're seasonal. So the equivalent, so I've got some numbers. So the amount of anthocyanins that we recommend that a human should have daily is about 135 milligrams a day, which is quite a lot. And you'd need to eat 70 grams of blackberries every day for the rest of your life to get the mouse benefits. And that's pretty tough, but it would just be 2 purple tomatoes. And I think that's possible, you know, in a pasta sauce, in a ketchup, in juice, or just in a Big Mac, or sorry, not to advertise, but in regular food that you would eat. So tomato is the most eaten vegetable worldwide. So
yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because yeah, actually, at least in the US, the majority of the fruits and vegetables people eat is tomato. So imagine eating less tomato and getting more of nutrition compared to when you have to eat like 70 grams of blackberries. I don't think anyone wants to do that. Well, Eric, so what do you see as an advisor and an investor in this technology? What do you see? How do you see it playing out for people, for consumers, and for the economy? And what should people look out for?
Yeah, well, I think we're, that Nate showed the slide about the Pew survey. We're real bullish about the fact that a lot of people actually want to see these technologies out there. I think we suffer a bit from the vocal minority problem with the GM stuff. One indicator of that is the reactions online to the article that Jennifer Kahn wrote up in the New York Times Magazine last summer. Tons of positive interest from that. The negatives, again, they had like words like Monsanto and glyphosate in them, which is, it's like chalk and cheese, right? We're so different from that. It's not even in the same ballpark. So tend to discount some of those negative comments rather significantly. Meanwhile, there's a lot of people that are just interested in cool technology. And if you think about the world today versus, Nate referred to 2 or 3 decades ago, people are so much more tuned into their food supply, where it comes from, what it consists of. Look at the diversity of things we can buy on the grocery shelves now. In a standard grocery store that would have been like in the most fringe organic co-op out in Berkeley in 1981, it's on the shelf of the Kroger down the block here. So people want healthier food generally. They want more choices. So we think this product is going to fit in perfectly with that. And right now we're looking at multiple business lines. One would be, a really delicious fresh market tomato, probably multiple varieties of that. Nate noted that in the chat, but something like a grape tomato that's sweet and easy to snack on. A meatier one that you could use for slicing. And then we're also really interested in processed products as well. So juice and sauces. So giving people a whole bunch of different ways to access the benefits of it. So we believe there's a huge upside for it. And the challenge for us is demonstrating that market demand in a way that can overcome the sort of background noise around, people are anti-GMO. And, people's a pretty big collective term. So there's a lot of people that are pretty pro-GMO out there too, or agnostic, and just want delicious tasting healthy food.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one of the questions that I'm sure that our gardeners have been asking, and someone also brought it out, Michael asked this question, which was answered by Nathan, thankfully, but I'm sure like so many people listening will want to hear this. Are you also planning to sell them as seeds? Nathan, maybe.
So I'm jumping. That is our intent. Yes. So, one of the things I think is really critical, and Eric touched on this, is when people say they don't want GMOs, they say, it's Monsanto and it's controlling farmers and it's not letting them save seeds, and they're suing farmers. And that's not what we're about. And we're about, Cathie created this new variety of tomato that looks really cool and is nutritionally enhanced, and we would like people to be able to enjoy that. And so, one of the main aims from the outset that Cathie really wanted to see was that seeds can go to home gardeners. People can grow these in their backyard, together with their Sun Golds and their, Champion and the beefsteaks, and enjoy this, food that they've grown themselves, which is not something that you need to spray glyphosate on, and you don't need a 100-page contract with the company to grow them, right? This is part of the intent. So like I mentioned before, we're working with the regulatory agencies right now, and so we need to follow the guidelines that they have. But we believe that there will be a path where we can share seeds with home gardeners. And this is the kind of thing that home gardeners can, save their seeds to grow the next season, right? That's I think going to be a really fantastic way for people to engage and become a bit more comfortable with bioengineered foods. The number of people who have home gardens is less than the number of people who go to the grocery store and buy tomatoes. And so that's where, we think there's a great opportunity to get a really fun variety of tomato out to home gardeners. But at the same time, we'd like to be able to reach more people. And I think the way to do that is to be able to get, like Eric mentioned, purple tomatoes, processed purple tomato products out onto the shelves where the average shopper can go and find them and make a decision. And it's, we have no expectations that everybody is going to love it and everybody is going to want it. Of course, that's never the case with any product. But if there's a small fraction of people who really enjoy it, that's fantastic. And we want to make different products available to different people.
Yeah, I can imagine how beautiful it would look to see a purple tomato juice on the shelf in the grocery store. That would be really cute. And Cathie, so for the purple tomato juice, for example, are you going to sell, will it be sold like with a specific health claim? And would there be?
No.
Okay.
So if you look on the internet, there is a wealth of information about the health benefits of anthocyanins. I don't need to summarize those. I think it's much better to say enriched in anthocyanins. The cost of getting a health claim is prohibitive in terms, and I want people to know what the evidence is. That's fine, so we can refer them to publications and this type of thing. But I think it's all about choice. Just like you would choose whether you want to have blackberries. I mean, it's the same type of data as for blackberries, for blueberries, for cranberries, etc., etc. All we've done is put tomato up with the super fruits.
That's great. That's like looking forward to a super fruit tomato, a super tomato. That sounds really good. To touch up a little bit more on I know Nathan, you already talked about it, on the USDA approval process, because our consumers are really keen and they want to know, when will this be available? Do we have a timeline in place? And do you think that at the pace that it's going, the regulatory policies are working in favor of what consumers want?
Let me take a first stab, and then maybe I'll pass on to Eric for some more color. But I think there's a few things. So the regulatory process from the USDA has just been updated. It just changed last year from the framework that they started using in 1987 to a new framework, which they're calling the Secure Rule. One of the intents of that is to do exactly what you said, to streamline the process, to bring it more into a fact-based approach, and to enable products like this to get out to the market smoother, but still with enough regulatory oversight to make sure that they're really safe. What I think we're seeing, and it's a very complex area. The science is complex, the regulatory landscape is complex, the market landscape is complex, stakeholder perceptions are complex. And so I think we're in this time where new regulations is coming in. We actually have, so under the Secure Rule, you put together a package that says, this is the bioengineering product that we have. We want to do a regulatory status review, and the USDA will say, okay, you're regulated, or you're deregulated, you're able to grow as a normal tomato. And they have a 180-day window to do this review process. And so we submitted the RSR, and we went through the whole 180-day window. We're still waiting to hear back, but this appears to be a product of the fact that it's new regulation. The agency is still assessing the process and double and triple checking before they release any decisions. And I think this is right. I think as they have this new change, they want to make sure they get it right. It's going to be tough to walk anything back. And So I think what we see today is maybe a little bit different than what we'll see in a few years once it's a bit more established. But I do think it's going in the direction of allowing these tools, which can have a huge impact on human health. They can have a huge impact on the climate effects of growing food and bring that, a little bit better. I think they will be helpful in this direction.
Eric, I can just add something quickly that, our interactions with the folks at the regulatory agencies have been 100% positive from the standpoint of, they have scientific training. They're interested in seeing real innovation come to the market. I think it's also exciting for them to see a kind of tiny shoestring enterprise like ours bring out a technology that they're actually trying to commercialize rather than it being one of the, traditional big four ag companies, which is the vast majority of the stuff that they review. So any delays that we're seeing, I attribute to sort of, systemic bureaucracy. It's not about any kind of misfeasance on the part of the really good-minded people that work in all those agencies that are really excited about this technology. So we're optimistic we'll get the approvals we need in the time frame that we need them. I think there's going to be changes coming, almost certainly, given what Nate mentioned about the secure rule with USDA. That really kind of puts them out of sync with FDA now. Traditionally, people always submitted simultaneously to the two, and you kind of got this answer around the same time frame, which was never really specified. Now, the FDA thing does not have a specified time frame, while USDA has 180 days. So we may see some changes coming there over the next couple of years. We'll have to keep our eye on that. And then, of course, in the rest of the world, it's tough, right? I think Europe has done themselves a disservice by being as anti-technology as they have been in this case, for good reasons, in large part. The way the technology was rolled out in Europe in the late 90s didn't sit well with people, and also came at a time when regulators or those in power were making statements that were clearly inaccurate and had lowered people's trust levels, related to stuff like mad cow disease and dioxin in Coca-Cola, and you name it. There were a whole bunch of those things in the 90s that happened. So we're hopeful that will be on a positive trajectory over time. People are going to see the benefit of this stuff and are going to want it. And that, that's for now, though. We got a pretty good market right here in the US.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. And those regulations are beginning to change, though, in Europe. I know at least for gene-edited crops, there's been revisions and interest to regulate it less because of how important it is in solving problems, agricultural challenges. So permit me to take this really interesting comment by Yang Yu. It says, purple tomato is really a big invention by Professor Cathie. Nowadays, many countries are currently liberalizing GMO restriction. Take China as an example. Last month, they published trial rules for the approval of gene-edited plants, paving way for faster improvement for crops. In near future, I think UK might publish the same related rules about GMOs. And I think it would be wonderful if the purple tomato also contained many other nutrients, such as vitamin C or vitamin D. So, Cathie, what do you have to say to that?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I think that there will be, in the UK, definitely, there will be an easing of the regulation or the regulatory burden in terms of field trials for gene-edited traits. As for GMOs, I'm not sure whether that would be facilitated. And I think the most promising or encouraging information I received was that when I talked to our Food Standards Agency about what would be needed about the purple tomato, I said, would it be possible to come back to them once we've got regulatory approval in the US and say, what more do you need in order to allow us to grow and sell this product in the UK? It would be really nice to bring it home as well, but I don't know. I mean, that's an aspiration. So, and I think the fact that we can do it somewhere may well ease the path for GMOs as well as gene edited products. Let's see. I'm optimistic.
Okay, that is great. So does Norwich have any products, any other products in the pipeline aside the purple tomato?
Yes, yes, it is. My research now, I am doing biofortification with vitamins in tomato. It's all in tomato, I'm afraid. So, and we have done, what we do is we collaborate with people working in experimental medicine to look at health benefits of combinations of polyphenols, which are generally against cardiovascular disease, against cancer, against inflammatory bowel diseases. So I'm not an expert in doing all of these things, but what I can do is provide them with an enriched food and a comparator that just doesn't have the enrichment in the particular compound. So this is an amazing advance in being able to say this particular nutrient or vitamin or whatever has these health benefits, and they're good, and you can do those sorts of studies in intervention trials as well. So I think it's slow. It's much slower than I would wish, but there's a pipeline of things coming. I've not retired yet, and I think there are more people coming along as well.
Yeah, thank you. So just to reiterate a comment from Dana, because looking at all of the products on the pipeline, it would be amazing to have a bioengineered food party with like the pink pineapple, the purple tomato, the rainbow papaya. It's going to be really colorful and amazing.
Yes, yes.
That is great. Okay, so we are actually doing well with time, so we have the opportunity to answer a couple of other questions. One is on the flavor saver tomatoes. Dr. Peter Davis have been asking, and I'm curious, do you have answers as to why the flavor saver tomatoes failed?
Eric, do you want to answer that
Well,
one?
I can. Yeah, I was probably the only one paying attention back then. Nate made a really good point in the chat. Calgene was treading new ground, and in fact, the reason we submitted to FDA for approval is directly attributable to what Calgene did back in 1984-85. They voluntarily submitted the dossier for food safety for the flavors. So just for background, folks, Flavor Saver was a tomato variety developed by a sort of ancestral ag biotech firm called Calgene in Davis, California. And it had a gene effectively knocked out in it that caused the fruit to be firmer. So, and the idea was you could pick the fruit when it was riper, pack it and ship it long distances and have a much tastier fruit than the normal ones you get. And I think most people don't realize that the tomatoes you get typically in the winter time in the US would be picked green, so they haven't even started to turn color or hit what's called the breaker stage, and then they're gassed with a simple molecule called ethylene, which is it's a byproduct of illuminating gas, and that's a plant hormone that causes them to ripen. When you do that, they never really develop very much flavor. They get red, but they kind of taste like they did when you picked them green. If you wait until they hit that breaker stage and start to get some pinkening of the color, then pick them, then they ripen naturally, they produce their own ethylene, and they taste a hell of a lot better. So the idea behind Flavor Saver was you could pick them at this later stage. And for a whole bunch of business reasons, the thing didn't work out very well. A lot of that had to do with, honestly, with control of the distribution channel by some interests that were pretty entrenched. And Calgene probably didn't do the best job of working with those guys. So the technology actually worked. In the test markets where they sold it, it was called McGregor's was the brand. I think I still have a polo shirt around that has a McGregor's logo on it. It sold out. It did quite well, but they had a real hard time blowing up the production as big as they did and then trying to truck it all the way to places like Chicago. So we're going to start a lot smaller and, kind of get our toes in the water first and figure out how to do it before we start to try to get into some, giant national distribution channel, which is just a much more complicated problem.
Yeah, Nathan, did you have a follow-up?
Well, yeah, let me just add on to what Eric said, of sort of, we have the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of giants here, and Calgene really made a ton of progress and laid out a certain path. And there was a question on the other line about golden rice, and I think that's another example of a great idea. Hey, people are dying and going blind because of vitamin A deficiency. What could be done to get more vitamins out there? Would it be possible to biofortify rice and bring this nutrient in? And you look at the 30-year arc of that product, and how long it took to get something that worked and worked well. That was the technical part. And even when that was in hand, there was all sorts of resistance, the acceptance and the perception and the regulatory pieces. And if you look at the adoption of new technologies, this is pretty normal, right? So when tomatoes and potatoes first came over to Europe from the New World, for 100 years, people said, this is deadly nightshade. You shouldn't eat any solanaceae because they're poisonous. And it took generations for people to become comfortable with these as foods, and to say, no, now we've had them around long enough, and we see that they're safe, and now we can build them into the culture. And so I think, the arc that Calgene, the arc that golden rice have had, the path of Arctic apple, some of these other pioneering products, it's a question that we're sort of asking with this product is it still going to be 20 years, or is it going to be 10? At what point are enough people becoming comfortable with this that these products can really get up and out? And this is part of the excitement that nobody knows. The ending is not written yet, and it's on sort of all of us, I think, who are in this webinar, both those of us who are trying to build this product and get it out, but the consumers, the scientists who are interested, the public, to engage with it and contribute to the conversation, and see if we can't make this more commonplace and really allow the benefits of biotechnology to come out and shine.
Those are really important concluding points, because part of what we have been curious about is, like, how does this really vary when we talk about taste? Is it going to be different from the normal variety, or is it going to taste the same?
It's going to look different. For sure, it looks different. I mean, I think that is something that's really important. So a lot of GM crops, you can't tell the difference. You can't tell that anything. So people kind of scared because you can't see what's different about it. You can see what's different about these tomatoes, and that's all there is to it. So it's not sort of scary and in some unknown way.
Great.
Yeah, that's my take as well, that the taste is influenced mostly by the other 25,000 genes that are in tomato, and of course how they're grown, right? So everybody who has a garden and buys tomatoes at different season, there's a massive environmental component, management, horticulture component that has a big influence, and the breeding and the genetics has a big influence. I think that's maybe one mistake that Calgene made. It really matters what variety you put a biotech invention into, and you can't forget about the plant breeding. You can't forget about the whole horticulture. All of these are really important.
Are you going to give the famous Calgene, was it Calgene quote? It's a shame we didn't try a variety that had some flavor to save.
Thank you. That is a really good point to make at this segue. Interestingly, we are running out of time, so I wanted to get a few final thoughts from all of you. As what do you see as the future of biofortified foods? I'll start with you, Cathie.
With me?
Yeah.
Well, baby steps, but I think everyone, especially having come through the pandemic, people are really interested in their health. And we've had 50 years of the consequences of Richard Nixon changing agricultural production in the US and the invention and propagation of junk foods. And we know that they are not good for us. And I think we have to give people the choice not to just eat junk food, but to eat healthily if they want to, especially when you're looking towards getting older, as I am. I want to live a healthy old age, and I know that diet is really important there. So
that is a strong point, and a very good way for us to finish. Let's all think about health, give people a safe and nutritious food. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversations. It's been super enlightening and engaging. And I want to thank you all, our wonderful participants, for sending in those thought-provoking questions. We have not ended yet. We'll continue this discussion on our social media pages. And you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram using the username @ScienceAlly. And to our wonderful speakers, I want to thank you for such a remarkable experience, Professor Cathie Martin, Dr. Eric Ward, and Dr. Nathan Pumplin. Thank you for providing us with those great updates on the nutritionally enhanced purple tomato. I'm particularly excited and looking forward to finding this at the grocery store, and I'm sure most of our consumers are. And we can't wait, and we look forward to hearing the decision from USDA. So with this, I would like to thank everyone once again for tuning in. I hope we see you all next time, and please do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
bye-bye.
Thanks, Modesta.